Book's international editor Isabel Oakeshott. So, Isabel, you really made the grade. You're in an Alistair Campbell tweet today. He is criticising essentially Donald Trump's appointment as Defence Secretary, a guy called Pete Hegseth, who is a Fox News host. So Alistair Campbell has tweeted, if we go down this route, we are a few years from Isabel Oakeshott being Chancellor. Good idea, if you ask me, by the way. And Mike Graham, Defence Secretary. I make a prediction. This guy won't survive the vetting process, despite the support of Musk, Cummings, and despite Trump trying to sideline the vetting process. Let's talk about Pete Hegseth, shall we? Yes, he does a couple of shows a week on Fox News. Here are a few of his other qualifications. He's a graduate of Princeton University, one of the greatest universities in the world. He received a Master of Public Policy award from the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. So essentially it's as if he was in Britain, he would have been to Oxford and Cambridge. He's a decorated army veteran who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as working in Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, of course, and he was the executive director for Concerned Veterans for America, an advocacy group. He's got the Bronze Star Medal, the Army Commendation Medal, the National Defence Service Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Expert Infantry Badge and Combat Infantryman Badge. So Campbell hasn't bothered to look into this guy at all. What he's decided is that Donald has gone, oh yeah, I like that right-wing presenter on Fox, I'll make him Defence Secretary. How many more asinine, ill-informed tweets is this idiot Campbell going to post?
Well, I'm glad that you read out a list of all his very, very impressive credentials for the job that he's just been appointed to by President Trump. Shall we also read out a list of the credentials of our current Defence Secretary?
Yes, please.
Because clearly Alistair Campbell thinks that you have to be more than what this guy has done in the past to get this job. Anyway, our current Defence Secretary, John Healey, not really a household name, his background, he worked as a journalist and the deputy editor of The House, which is an internal magazine at Westminster. In 1984, he became a full-time disability rights campaigner for several national charities. He was then in communications, did a bit of slightly low-level academia, and then basically became a career politician. So I think I would make the argument that the current Defence Secretary has basically zero qualifications, which are particularly relevant to the job. He's a career politician, pretty undistinguished. I have no idea why he was made Defence Secretary. And I think Alistair Campbell has really blundered on this one. Frankly, he got it even more wrong in relation to Mike.
Not a bit wrong in terms of don't forget him and his mate Rory Stewart have come out of the traps defending that wonderful Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, saying he's a good man, decent man, very sorry to see him go. I mean, talk about tone deaf. The thing about Welby is, I mean, we don't know the full details, but in not reporting to the police what his old mate John Smythe did to 132 kids, the most horrific sexual abuse, violent abuse of poor little kids over many years. Welby, we know, he admits he sort of knew about this back in 2013. He's known Smythe since the 1970s. It looks very much as if the Archbishop of Canterbury covered up for his old mate. If that is the case, then that is a very, very wicked thing to do. And a lot of lefties have come onto Twitter to criticise Stewart and Campbell for supporting Welby at this point. These two are tone deaf and frankly idiotic. They don't bother to research anything.
Well, I know both of them a bit. So I know Rory Stewart pretty well and Alistair Campbell enough because we've often been on shows together. And by the way, I don't mean any disrespect really to John Healey, but he doesn't have any particular military background or credentials. That's my point.
Yeah.
I think Rory, bless him, is having a bit of a kind of metaphoric breakdown. You know, we saw him last week after Trump had that fantastic election result. Rory looked as if he'd almost been in tears over it. You know, he was completely wrong in his prediction for the outcome of the election, and went on to say the following day that he was basically heartbroken for the world. You know, basically, he actually said heartbroken for the world. You know, he thinks the world's going to end, in short. I think he spent far too much time around Alistair Campbell. I mean, Rory Stewart, in case anyone's forgotten, and well they might, used to be a Conservative MP. Yeah. And this just shows you what has happened to the Conservative Party. He's not a Conservative anymore, but he's doing a really good imitation of being a member of the Green Party at this point.
Exactly. And lest we forget, he tweeted before last week's American election, very confident, Kamala Harris will win comfortably for the following reasons. You know, women will not vote for Trump, and the people will realise he's a tyrant and a rapist and la, 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 la. It's like, hey, look, Rory, everybody always says about him, he's very widely travelled. Hey, Rory, I've got somewhere where you should travel a bit. America, then you might understand it, because you clearly do not. And then when he got that so howlingly wrong, he sat down with Campbell and said, was his excuse. I admit I got it wrong, but, you know, I refuse to be wrong for pessimistic reasons. I don't mind being wrong for optimistic reasons. So he excused himself because his wrongness was based on optimism. As you say, sounds to me like this guy is having a nervous breakdown, and he looks like Eddie Redmayne after somebody kicked his head in, doesn't he?
Oh, well, look, Rory's a friend of mine, so I'm not going to go any further in kicking a man while he's down.
Oh, come on, Isabel, join me in this festival of fun.
Clearly, I think we need to give him a little bit of space.
Well, he should shut up, though. He should shut up. He should wind his neck in, because over the past week, he's made an absolute... I'm sorry he's a friend of yours. And by the way, he does seem like a nice guy. I agree. I think he's misguided, but he seems like a nice guy. But over the past week, he's made a fool of himself, and I think he's been coerced into this foolishness by the eminently foolish Alistair Campbell.
I'm sure that's absolutely right. I'm sorry, anyone who spends most of their time, as those two do now, around Alistair Campbell is probably, you know, going to be a little bit unsettled by the experience, shall we say, and unsettled in their views and their outlook on the world. So let's leave it at that. I think poor Rory needs a little bit of understanding and some compassion. But, you know, look, we're a week on now, aren't we, from Trump's stunning victory, and still the lefties are in a state of total meltdown. I mean, look at The Guardian today announcing as a newspaper that it won't be using X as a platform anymore because they are so appalled and stunned.
Toxic Elon Musk, toxic Elon Musk, right wing and all that. And did you see, by the way, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to get your take on it, that the editor of The Guardian last week, Catherine Viner, wrote to all the journalists. These are national newspaper journalists, as well as the rest of the staff, and said, if you need counselling after the victory of Donald Trump, the company will provide you with the therapy you obviously need. I mean, come on. I mean, this is...
I actually thought it was a joke.
No, it wasn't.
I thought it was a joke.
It's just...
It was all too true. And you know that they think that way. You know that these people are in a state of total emotional turmoil because they actually think that the world is going to come to an end. And what they can't see is that this is a tremendously exciting development. And actually, an awful lot of things may be about to get a lot better, but we'll not see them admitting that, even if the evidence is right there in front of them.
OK, we've had to squeeze in more than I thought we would have to due to breaking news and various other elements. But let's quickly do this, and then we can talk about not much COP29 after the next break. I want to squeeze in the latest developments on the migrant crisis front. And this stance by Keir Starmer and Calamity Cooper, his hapless Home Secretary, that somehow or other the migrant crisis, the escalating migrant crisis, can be solved by smashing the evil people smuggling gangs, is getting more and more preposterously absurd. Earlier this week we learnt that the Home Office officials who have to deal with all of this are totally confused by Yvette's Border Security Command, and they don't believe that Keir and Cooper's smash the people smuggling gangs approach will in any way solve the crisis. Of course it won't. The migrants have to be stopped. As long as migrants are coming, there will be people smuggling gangs. You can arrest them all today, and the migrants will continue to come, so there'll be more people smuggling gangs tomorrow, so there'll be new gangs. So it's ridiculous. Now, by the way, Martin Hewitt, the leader of the Border Security Command, also says that smashing the gangs will not solve the crisis. He says we need a deterrent. He's still droning on about it, though. I think Keir Starmer's approach to this is performative. It's just something for him to say. I'll smash the gangs, I'll solve the crisis. Everyone saying that he won't. And one last point. Today, it has emerged, because it's the other raft of his solve the crisis plan, is this deal with the EU to have a migrant swap, where we give Europe some of ours and we have some back, no doubt more than we give them. But anyway, Hungary has said today, we're not having any part of any such plan. We will veto that. So that's not going to happen. So, you know, by the way, they haven't caught any people smuggling gangs anyway. But even if they do, that won't work. And yet, this fool of a Prime Minister carries on saying exactly the same thing. We know it won't work. But I think it's just performative. I think it's just something for him to say.
Yeah, I don't think he's really interested in solving it at all. And, you know, if I were the boss of this new agency, I would want to be giving the media an update every single week on what I were tangibly achieving. I would want to be telling the media, OK, this is what we're doing, and here's how it's going to work. And let me show you that this is actually going to reduce the flow of migrants across the channel. But he can't do that, because he knows that if the strategy begins with smashing the evil gangs, it's just not going to be effective. And what he should do is put his foot down and said, you know, since he clearly accepts, from what we know, that it is a flawed strategy, he should just tell Cooper and the Prime Minister, look, I'm not going to go down this route. I mean, by all means, yeah, let's try and tackle the people smugglers, but we first need to tackle the so-called pull factors, all the very many reasons that enterprising individuals come over here in search of a better life. I don't blame them at all, because their chances of getting a better life are pretty high. Yeah,
they certainly are. Just to quickly rattle off some statistics. Over a 10-day period going back to the last day of October, October the 31st, this is the number of migrants that crossed the channel. Thursday, this is last Thursday week, Thursday 230, Friday 245, Saturday 188, Sunday, a day of rest, 0, Monday 178, Tuesday 263, Wednesday 307, Thursday 133, Friday 144, Saturday just a few days ago 507, Sunday 209. If you add that all up, that's 2,404 in 10 days. And if you do the sums again, every migrant costs us £40,000 a year. So in that 10-day period, that's about 95 million quid's worth of expenditure for the British taxpayer, just for 10 days worth of migrants. And he's still, while everyone tells him smashing the gangs won't work, he just keeps trolling out the same old claptrap. It's terrifying that he won't confront. This is a disaster. And he's acting like, oh, it doesn't really matter.
It could not matter more. And, you know, we keep coming back to this. You've got a Chancellor that's standing in front of the British people saying, we've got no money. There's a black hole in the public finances. We can't afford this. We can't afford that. We've got to tax you yet more. Well, how about tackling it from the point of view of not continuing to add to the population a bunch of people who have no idea who they are or whether they wish us well, but we certainly know that they're not coming over here and going to be able to work and provide any kind of contribution to society, not least because, quite rightly, if you come across the channel, you're not entitled to just take a job. We do know that quite a few of them slip pretty quickly into the black economy and therefore are contributing absolutely nothing into the system. So I just can't take this Chancellor seriously or this Prime Minister seriously when they talk about problems with the public finances, when they're not actually tackling one of the key things that is adding to the financial burden every single day.
Yeah, and astronomically. So a question to the audience. As I just told you, 2,404 migrants in 10 days. So they're coming over at the rate of more than 200 a day. That's about £95 million worth of annual expenditure just for those people. Now, extrapolate that into these statistics. More than 18,000 migrants have arrived since Labour came to power on July the 5th, which is not surprising because Keir Starmer, of course, impetuously axed our only deterrent, the Rwanda scheme, on day one of his ludicrous regime. Now that adds up so far for this year to more than 34,000. That's 18% up on last year. So this government is making this crisis much, much worse. So bear that in mind. 2,404 migrants in 10 days. That will cost us 95 million. 2,404. So far this year, 34,000. So you do the maths, because I'm not very good at maths, but it's just stunningly astronomical. We're talking billions, and they're talking about a black hole in their finances. It's an outrage.